All right, hey, this is Wheel Talk Seattle.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, Colin and Matt are here.
We got a couple guests with us.
Yes, we do. So we're at the Copper Tree Cafe, or Coffee House in North Capitol Hill. We have with us Chris Priest and Lolly Kunkler, the founders of Safe 35th. They are a group of people who support safety improvements along 35th Avenue Northeast, which is a busy arterial street connecting the neighborhoods of Lake City, Maple Leaf, and University District. Mm-hmm. The avenue underwent a major repavement project this year using the city's transportation budget, and the design leading up to the construction was for a protected bike lane traveling north and an unprotected bike lane moving south downhill. These bicycle lanes were on the bike master plan for Seattle, and it was a plan that took hundreds of hours of community engagement, volunteer hours, and lobbying efforts to secure. And 35th Avenue Northeast was identified as a street that should include bicycle infrastructure improvements. However, yet, what we now have is possibly a more dangerous road after repavement and lane paint on the road. No bike lanes have been constructed. Travel lanes have been widened, encouraging faster speeds. A center lane was introduced instead of bike lanes. Some dub it the Durkin Speedway, named after our Seattle mayor, Jenny Durkin. As the one to appoint the director of Seattle Department of Transportation, and with the mayor's hands-on involvement with the neighborhood's conflicting interests, she has had to accept some responsibilities for the numerous crashes taking place on the street now, and with people being hospitalized because of it. This corridor is in the northeastern part of Seattle, and it is like a case study for the entire city, as we have seen injuries related to car crashes the highest that we have seen in almost a decade now. Fortunate for us, we have Chris and Lolly here to help inform us about with what occurred during this year leading up to construction, how the decision to scrap the bike plans maybe came about, and what has happened since in the interim. So welcome to the show, Chris and Lolly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Matthew.
Thank
welcome.
You for both being here.
Thank you.
So again, thanks for being here and talking with us about this. Before we delve deep into all this and all the conflict, we hope to get to know you both a little bit more. So can you each tell us about yourselves and maybe how you two met?
Sure.
Who wants to go first?
We met at a civil engineering firm actually that did one of the original bicycle and pedestrian master plans, and so
it's called Fishing Off the Company Pier.
Yes, I helped write those original documents, and then Lolly's a civil engineer, and so we started dating whilst we were there. We've just always been cyclists and pedestrians, and I mean we have a car, but it goes weeks and weeks without using and that kind of stuff. And for us, honestly, we were sort of in and out of this whole thing that started really back in 2010 when the community started coming together and trying to figure out what they wanted to do with 35th Avenue. And so we would kind of go to public meetings and do different things, but we've gotten involved in a couple other things like Prop 1. We went in door to door and did some phone calling and stuff. So any kind of the big transportation stuff, we've tried to get involved just to try to improve the city. But then for 35th, we went to all the public meetings and any of the big stuff, especially when they came out for the Bicycle Master Plan, which I think was in 2016. Just because we've lived in that neighborhood for almost 20 years, and so, or no, 15 years or something like that. So we've always wanted 35th to be a little bit safer for people and stuff like that. I personally helped pull a 16-year-old boy out from underneath of a car that had overturned as he came off 35th too fast onto 52nd. And so we had to pry the door open and pull him out. So 35th, and then our neighbors have had their fences run over. We have friends that have lost mirrors and that like that. It's just a busy, crazy road that was, I don't know, over-designed. It was like people just go so fast along it. So I don't know. For a long, long time, we've talked about improving it. So
fantastic, thank you. And Lolly, how about can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're a civil engineer as well?
Yeah, so I'm a civil engineer and I do stormwater and transportation design. And I've been doing that for about 20 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks. And we've lived in the neighborhood. I've actually lived in the neighborhood for about 20 years. Chris for about 15, so we're really familiar with the roadway changes and how sort of an increase in population and access to there's been a lot of phases of public transportation for the Wedgwood, Ravenna, Bryant neighborhoods over the course of the last 2 decades, various bus systems, and then of course the train came in. So And I had the opportunity to sort of see the evolution of bicycling, having originally come to Seattle and lived in the Roosevelt neighborhood, which I feel like had a little bit more infrastructure a little sooner. I wouldn't consider myself a cyclist. I would consider myself a person who rides to work on a bike.
Okay.
I own no spandex, none at all.
None required.
None required.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look good in it. But I do ride every day. We run our errands. We have we take our dogs on our bikes, which makes me particularly conscientious about the way that I ride. I take out the earbuds and focus on, you should never ride with earbuds in.
That's one of the rules.
Some of us do, but
Gotta harden up.
to all the bike riding community, please do not run red lights, because it makes people really mad. So don't do it. It's really hard not to, but don't do it. I just wanted to say that. I wanted to get that plug.
It's a nice
So,
plug.
yeah.
So you two started dating when you were working on Bike Master Plan? Is that right? Did I get that right?
I was actually not on the BMP. I was not working on the BMP at the time, but I was doing transportation. So our firm did the original BMP and then the BMP rewrite. And actually, the team of people, there's a consulting team and an SDOT team that work together to produce the research and the drawings for 35th Avenue Northeast. And the company that worked with SDOT, the girl that sort of led that was an original author of the Bicycle Master Plan. So she's very knowledgeable, and her team is very knowledgeable. And of course, SDOT has a lot of really savvy civil engineers. So it was really a well thought out, put together team that put that design together. And so we were really disappointed that there was suddenly so much pushback from people who don't do engineering designs and don't have any qualifications.
Yeah. So I guess the real pressing question is, like, who initiated the contact between you two? Like, who introduced themselves?
Oh, I don't know. We did not start dating when we worked together. We started dating after we worked together. I just want to make that clear. Anybody here?
Yeah. I was like a technical editor / marketing writer there, and so that's why I worked on the Bicycle Master Plan, and they just wanted me to help write it so it sounded all right. And then we just started dating, and then I actually went over to an architecture and urban planning company because she was the civil engineer, and it seemed like probably I should be the one that changed jobs. So.
Fantastic. Great love story.
Yeah.
It really is.
It was fun to work
Real
together,
romance.
though, but-
Real romance.
Yeah.
Awesome. So in a message, we connected over Messenger, and I invited you on, and you said that you and Lolly, is that right, were some of the co-founders of Safe 35th, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So my sister Robin and her husband live on 35th Avenue, not too far from us, and we do a lot of dog walking and beer drinking. So we had seen some anti-bike lane signs come up, which we were surprised because we'd been to the public meetings. There'd been a lot of support for bicycle infrastructure, for pedestrian improvements, and so we saw those signs go up, and so we sort of pulled together some resources and put some signs up. And then it was a few days later, maybe even a few weeks, that
It was a few weeks.
Chris got contacted through the Facebook page that we put up, and there had been
The
a whole
Urbanist actually was
it the Urbanist?
The Urbanist was
Yeah.
the one that kind of connected us. There was already another.
Yeah, there'd been like a whole
group
other group that didn't know, but they'd seen the signs go up, and so they were like, how do we get a hold of these people? The signs don't have any information except support the safety improvements. So then they finally found us, and their group was much larger than Four Drunks. So we ended up teaming up, and really great people.
So yeah, there's like probably 20 people that are really the founders of it. We just went out almost guerrilla and went like, well, we've got to have some show that the community's actually, there are people in the community that really do support this, because we've been working on it since 2012, and it was really the businesses that had started the red sign thing, the Save 35th, and then they put some door hangers on people's stores that were completely misleading, like that 60% of all parking was going to disappear. We still to this day they've never been able to tell us how they got that number. That I think it was 400 more cars a day traveled on the road than what SDOT estimated. We cannot figure out where they got that number. They've never been able to tell us that either. And so their door hangers were completely misleading. And so we just thought, okay, we need to rebut this or whatever. So we took it upon ourselves. Like, I designed that sign right there and the signs that you see, and then all of our door hangers in InDesign at work. And then we'd clandestinely print them out. And then on weekends, we'd just go and plaster our neighborhood. And then there was a bunch of people that would come and tear them down. And so then we'd F you, so we'll put them back up or whatever. And every time we did it, though, it was awesome. We'd meet new people and we'd get in debates with them or educate them. And we'd get more allies and that kind of stuff. And then one of the big things that we did, which I always think is fascinating, is right when this all started happening, we delivered to every single business that had a red sign up a package of information that was all studies on how bike lanes help businesses and can improve things, or at least have a net zero effect. And we never heard we put contact information like, hey, we're people that live in the neighborhood. These are your neighbors. Oh, yeah. We never heard, not a single business ever tried to reach out and talk to us. So it was never really like a dialogue. So but we felt very motivated. Like I said, the community had come together in 2012 and put together a really, really impressive vision for 35th. The number one thing that they wanted was better pedestrian facilities. Number 2 was bicycle facilities. Number 3 was parking. So we all went along and did this whole process, and they did so well, they won a neighborhood grant, and they hired 2 consultants, a civil engineering firm and an urban planning firm, to help them develop these plans and these ideas. And so we went to all these meetings, and it was interesting. We were at the Unitarian Church up there on 35th, and ahead of us were 6 people, and behind us was a handful of people. And there was a nice booth that SDOT had explaining the changes, and then with the bicycle master plan. Not a single person agreed to sign up for the news or information or whatever. So yeah, it was mainly the businesses that really, really started this whole red, we don't want it. And a lot of that was because they didn't know that it was happening until the paving project was on the books.
Right. Okay. So there had been years that had led up to this, and you were saying that most of the time you were meeting folks as you were canvassing throughout the neighborhood too. What were some of the positive responses that you heard?
Oh, there was one time when we had done the handwritten letter first. Our first approach was to do the handwritten letter to the businesses and ask them to contact us and be like, oh, you might be frightened, but this is going to be okay, and the community wants it. And then we got our responses, so then we started with the signs. And we had the letters to just local neighbors when we came past. And so we were walking down 35th, and there was a young couple with their very young toddler, and they were unloading the car, and I was like, hey, I just wanted to give you this letter about the safety improvements along 35th. And the dad turns and goes, I don't want the letter unless you're going to put in some bike lanes. And I was like, yeah, you can have my letter. I'm not going to put the bike lanes in because it's not my job, but I hope you will support it and put this sign up, because you would give the sign up with a little letter, what you would be supporting if you put this up, and they put it up. So we saw a lot of young families, and then people who are older or mobility impaired,
yes,
seeming to have a lot of interest in the safety improvements for sure. There was definitely some negative responses from the businesses, very negative responses from some of the businesses, and kind of insulting.
We don't have to say names, but what were some of the really
we were called liars and fake news. And
I got called a lesbian, which isn't an insult, so I didn't really understand that. Okay. But whatever. I got called a ragged cunt, which is my line, so that made me mad.
Yeah. One of our Robin, Lolly's sister, was called nasty and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, some guy wrote said she was nasty in an email. Wrote her that she was nasty.
Yeah, and there was a lot of the stuff on social media, but it was really funny because when you'd actually talk to the people, they would completely retreat. So you'd be like, why am I lying? I know you. I saw you on Facebook. Attempt to tell me that I was lying. So explain to me how I was lying, and they'd be like, well, I don't really want to, and you'd be like, because you have no facts and no statistics whatsoever. But one of the really, really nice things about it when we were hanging up signs and stuff is we met people that they're college students that don't have cars, and so every day they have to get to the University of Washington. Well, they can't take the Burke-Gilman Trail. 35th is how you get to the University of Washington, right? Or we met a nice woman who lives in the apartments on 65th. She has mobility impairments and pushes a cart up to the QFC or Safeway. She has lost 4 carts in like the last 10 years because the cars hit them. And so for her, it was just like, yeah, this road is crazy. People come whipping out of their driveways and stuff. I had a few years ago, I was running along 35th, and this woman pulled out of her driveway, was looking down at her phone, and didn't realize I was there until I started pounding on her hood. So everyone kind of came up and had their stories. So the people that supported the safety improvements were really the people that lived on 35th or lived in the community that like needed to walk and needed to like bike and stuff like that, or people that were just really conscientious and had done some of the research and realized that the bike lanes weren't just about giving protected places for cyclists to be, which is very important, but also that they have a drastic effect on improving safety for all people that use it, because they just close down, they shorten the amount of space between for pedestrians, and they calm traffic because of and all that. I mean, you can speak better to that kind of stuff than I can, but
I mean, I'm not suggesting that we use cyclists or people who ride bikes as buffers, but but more infrastructure on the road, including just residential streets with cars parked on both sides. That's a really great way to slow people down. I mean, I know people don't prefer that, but
there's a lot of street parking in Wedgwood, like
oh my God.
off the arterial.
There's
that's what blows my mind.
There's I think 660 parking spots, not in the public right of way, on just on the private sites. Every single business except for the Jasper Apartments has private parking. A business at the Jasper Apartments have private parking, and one of those businesses that doesn't have private parking had a safety sign. They're like, we want the improvements. We don't care about the parking. And it was funny because we had some interactions with people. In fact, one of the guys that's on the community supporting the safety improvements had received information from the anti-safety group. And he'd read it, and it had frightened him, and he was angry, and he wrote the mayor. And then when I was going through the public, you can see all the emails, right? You can ask for him. So we asked for him, and we read him. Yep. And I was like, oh, he's infiltrated our group. He's anti-bike lane. What? I was like, oh my gosh. And then I kept scrolling through the emails, and then he's a couple more emails in the emails to the mayor. Hey, I've had a change of heart, because I see what safety improvements can do. And it was really cool. It was, he literally, the language that they used in their flyers and stuff it was pretty scary. And and it's especially,
well, they showed up at churches and all sorts of stuff too.
Working in public, we do a lot of public outreach. Obviously, it's Seattle. It's there's so much GD process.
Yes.
And we do a lot of public outreach, and so we hear a lot of the kind of scary language that people use to frighten people, not just for bicycle infrastructure, but all kinds of stuff. And so when I read it, to me it seemed less scary because I knew it was
rhetoric,
right? But then I put myself in his shoes, and he's like, he doesn't do that. He's like a school teacher or something, and we saw somebody tell a family that had come out of the synagogue. It was a older guy and a lady, and they were like taking signatures outside the synagogue to fight the safety improvements. And they told them that if the safety improvements went in, their children would have to cross 35th to get to school, and it would be very dangerous, and they would be killed. Okay. Well, that does not geometrically make any sense, right?
So these, their arguments weren't really
it was insane.
Valid or backed up with statistics. There was more.
One of them was that the school buses would have to stop, and then the kids would have to be deposited into 35th.
Yeah, it was very bizarre.
And so their argument was that because the bike lanes would be over here, the buses wouldn't be able to stop wherever they normally would be. But it's just a misunderstanding of how and one of the problems we had was whenever we would correct them or ask them questions about the information that they were using, they didn't change. So once you corrected them, rather than go, oh, we're wrong, we're not going to lose 60% of our parking, they just kept pressing that. So it was a really, really interesting kind of study in them knowing full well that they're pushing crap, but they know it works, so they're just going to keep doing it.
Okay.
So, it was tricky.
I mean, how do you, I guess, counter that when there's such a, I don't know, when there's so much
a lot of fear and anger that make people
More
just
anger
keep
and
pushing.
fear
I mean,
kind
you
of
know, when you
coming
feel
out.
really passionately about
Yeah.
something and then suddenly you realize you're wrong and you just keep arguing anyway. Everybody does that.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, so we, I was speaking with like these 3 women outside of the donut shop, maybe, or I think it was right by the donut shop, and they had confronted me because they recognized me or something. I don't know, and so I was
small community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small community, whatever. And they said, we see you have put signs up, and we want to support our parking. There's people that are mobility impaired, and we need to have parking for them. And I said, well, there's private parking lot. Every business on the whole 35th has a private parking lot. And the one woman in the middle goes, well, I have a private business and I don't have a private parking lot. And I go, oh, are you in the Jasper Apartments? She goes, no. And I said, then you have a private parking lot. And she goes, I do not. And then the other 2 women on either side of her just sort of stood there. And then I don't remember the girl's name, but they turned, kind of looked at her, and she's like, Angie, you have 12 spots. Like, it was super funny. And then the woman was like, it was like I knew my facts.
Yeah.
She hadn't expected me to know that. She thought if she pushed back, I would falter. Or maybe she didn't even think about it. But it was really funny because then the 2 women on the outside didn't want to lie. I mean, I don't think I changed her mind or anything, but it was just funny to catch them. It was just, it was just very dishonest, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so you caught them, or their friends even caught them.
Yeah, and I think that was. I think what I wish is that I think that there is very legitimate concerns about the loss of parking for people who are mobility impaired and use vehicular methods of travel.
Okay.
But what I thought was missing from the conversation, and which the anti-safety group didn't want to have, was the conversation about how can we make sure that we have ADA compliant access in the public right of way and on the private sites, particularly at the synagogue, particularly at the various churches,
Right.
Library, yeah.
right, or like the billion empty spots in the Safeway parking lot. Maybe we can, bogart some of those that are closer to the sidewalk or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were just not interested. They were like, nope, screw you. I need my parking. This is, and I'm just.
Right.
It's like, that's exactly what we're talking about. Your parking.
What?
Yeah.
Like it was just, I don't know. And we see that. I mean, I've seen that a lot. I was at a public meeting the other day for a project that I won't say the name of, but there was this guy, and he has a huge house with this enormous yard, but he's north of 85th, and so he doesn't have any sidewalks. And there's a couple young families on the street that really are pushing to get some pedestrian infrastructure because, for children and getting to school.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I want a sidewalk, but I don't want it on my side because I don't want it to be on my yard. And I said, well, this is the public right of way.
Right.
And he goes, but I use it. And I said, so you don't want a sidewalk on your side because you want to use the public right of way for your own private uses? And he goes, yeah. Like he didn't he didn't even like act like that was he didn't even act like I caught him. He just was like, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
which
the
is weird.
businesses
I want the
replied.
sidewalk on my side, but
A lot of the businesses replied with that, like when we would say, well, you're using public parking to house cars, they'd get really flustered or whatever. So the main way that we tried to sort of argue with the misinformation and the weird, like they claimed that there was no pedestrian improvements for they literally like replaced every single sidewalk, curb ramp. So, a lot of the stuff that they said was just outrageous. And so we put booths up at community events. We like went door to door and did door hangers. We were available all the time. We hosted rides and walks. We hosted delegations from the city. They had the state reps come out, and we had a meeting with them, and just as many ways as we could possibly think of to get like the actual information out.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of doing the PR job of SDOT, which was tricky. They were awesome and were really, really helpful and provided us with facts and information and stuff like that. But we didn't have a budget. We didn't have like an actual organization. Like we would email each other and like, oh, who can show up and man a booth for 3 hours at a community event on Thursday?
Yeah.
And so many people are like, well, crap, I got kids, I got this, I got that. So like whoever could show up did it. And then a lot of times we just hosted rides or community events to try to show people that there's a lot of people in our community that don't have cars, and it's not by choice. The number 3 people that ride their bikes to work are the people that make under $15,000, $25,000, and $35,000 a year. These are people that have to use bikes to get to work.
Right.
And we have them in our community, and a lot of people just don't realize that. And then there are people. We met a woman that's disabled, and so she can't drive, but she can drive an e-bike.
Okay.
And so bringing those people out into the community and having people be able to see that there are people who are not doing it because they're tech bros. Who,
Oh, did you hear about the crazy tech bro tweet?
No.
Oh, the anti-safety group.
What did they say?
They said it was some. You could probably quote it exactly, but it was something like, "Single mothers don't ride bikes. Only tech bros ride bikes," and it went.
They had to close down their Twitter feed.
They had to shut down their. I
man.
printed it out. I printed the tweet out. It's like 27 feet
Oh, they just
long.
got there. If you look at the Seattle
It's
Bicycle
hilarious.
blog, they did an excellent article
It's
about
so
it.
funny.
And did
It's the-
all the.
It will bring you great joy to look at.
Oh
it.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Another good thing about that though is we met a woman and she lives up on like 80 something, and she drops her kids off at Bryan Elementary School, and then she goes downtown, and she does this all on a bike. She got divorced recently. She lives in her parents' basement and stuff like that, and so we got to meet her and talk to her, and she has to ride 35th every day. She's got 2 kids on the back of a bike. She's got and then she comes home from downtown, picks up the kids, and runs errands, and then has to get home or whatever. And so for her, it was like an existential threat. She'd had so many close calls. She got 2 kids on a bike with her. So for her, it was like she was very passionate. And we still talk to her and stuff like that. And she's just furious. When we found out that somebody got hit on 75th and 35th on Friday night, she was one of the first people to like make a comment about that and go like, "This is horrible and atrocious" and stuff like that, and so avoidable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What I'm finding interesting is that it's more of an interest-based kind of an argument, almost on their half, where there's fear and anger kind of fueling what their kind of drive, I guess, and whereas. So on top of that too, you're using more of the locals in the community to really you're doing rides, you're doing community meetings, putting up signs, trying to bring out information, providing it to people and the businesses. And there's still I was reading that there a political action committee was formed, right? So where they can actually get money in, and which would help them to do, I don't know exactly what, maybe you
Well,
can
They're
say.
fighting
They've
infrastructure.
expanded
Yeah,
it.
they're fighting infrastructure on East Lake. They're fighting infrastructure.
They actually
Is this the same one?
Yeah, it's the same group. They actually got in league with this guy John Russo. He does Move LA, and it's an organization down there that tried to fight all bike lanes. And he's an engineer, and so he had done a bunch of work in the past. And so at some point they got some information from him. So a lot of the tactics and stuff that they used for misinformation and confuse people and use they had a 13-point paper that they presented that people from our group went onto their Facebook page and just shredded, this is wrong, you misquoted this person. They used a persona study for Portland that was written to encourage bicycling or cycling, to prove that people don't want cycling or whatever, just because they took certain excerpts out of it.
I see.
And so, I don't know where I was going with that, sorry.
That's all right. But so there was even money that was getting put into going
yeah.
against
Oh, and they knew, they
just
also,
this neighborhood deal.
we're very well connected. One of them knows the mayor very personally,
Right.
and they were businesses. They have money and stuff like that. The problem with it for us is the businesses are great. Most of 35th is still residential, though. There's only certain parts that are really businesses. And then the other thing was those businesses are not always there. I mean, it's one of the reasons why they were caught off guard is because they didn't open their mail. They didn't answer the door when somebody showed up to talk to them about the safety improvements and that kind of stuff. And so for us, the people that live in the community, their kind of interference has been very frustrating. And they're the ones that put out this propaganda that got the people, a lot of the older people and a lot of people that just got the sound bites scared and worried and stuff like that. Because 2016, they came out and did the bicycle master plan. They had 2 public meetings. They did a huge survey. There was literally no opposition to it. We were like, yes, this is awesome. It's going to finally happen. And we'd already had the neighborhood grant in 2014. So things were really feeling like they were moving forward. And then they put out the information about the paving plan, and it's like all of a sudden the businesses realized what was going to happen and woke up, and they just went on a tear. And that's when they really moved into action, and it was really last minute. I mean, one of the reasons, honestly, and it's not their fault, that SDOT was so taken aback is they've been working on this with the community for almost a decade, and pedestrian and bicycles were the two big things that we wanted. And when they went out and done stuff, they walked the street, they changed the plan for the bicycle lanes based on community input. So they'd done like all their due diligence or whatever,
Right.
and so it just kind of felt like it came right out of left field when they started receiving all this opposition. And even for us, the people that had kind of nominally participated, we're like, where did this come from all of a sudden?
Yeah. That's so. Maybe you could talk about like the process that you went under with, or that happened with SDOT, the Department of Transportation, or Mayor's office, or whether there was a like a consultant, like a community mediator kind of a role.
So what happened was our group sort of had come together,
Right.
and then the anti-safety people had their situation happening, and there was some public discourse literally on the street, like. They would be standing on the street, and we would be standing on the street, and people would be yelling, or people would be talking, or what have you. Chris mentioned we did a couple public events where they would have a table. It was so funny.
Yeah,
we did
we
this
would
one
literally be
event.
across from each
oh my
other.
gosh, they put them across from us, and it was just like little table,
Yeah.
and they were just these like 6 grumpy old white people sitting there, like all frowny, and we had like literature, and they had like they just wanted you to sign the petition. They had nothing.
yeah.
They didn't even have water. We had like cupcakes with like pedestrians and bicycles and dogs, and we had like coloring books
But we
for the
had
kids and
posters with
crayons and
facts,
posters,
too.
and like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
had facts. We had information,
Backed it
and
up.
we weren't asking anyone to sign any petition. We were just giving them the facts, and I think that the council put them across from us just to be funny. But anyway, so there had been a lot of public discussion. A particular person in our group was really in a lot. 2 of them were really in communication a lot with Lorelei at SDOT, and well, he's gone now, so it doesn't. Ahmed, he's gone now, but and so that sort of was happening via email, some coffee conversations. I actually wasn't really involved too much in those. And then I was down at the Walk Bike Place in New Orleans in September,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and I'm sitting in the audience of a presentation, and a guy comes over that I was on the Seattle Design Commission with, and he sits next to me and he goes, "So I hear you guys are going into mediation." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "I hear you going into mediation." And he like pulls up his phone, and he has the SDOT Facebook feed, or I don't know what he had on, and he holds it up, and it was like safe going into mediation, $15,000, whatever. And so
$14,000.
yeah, I was like 14. And so
Really?
then I was on the mediation team with some other
Yeah.
people. But it was really funny because I was at Walk Bike Place,
But it was really like Rob.
and I
This is
learned
where you hear-
at Walk Bike Place that the group is going into mediation. It was
Yeah,
super funny.
But a lot of that was Rob Johnson trying to figure out some way to like move things forward, because they were super opposed, and like we said, there was never any kind of a dialogue. When we would meet them, because we would have a demonstration and they would have a counter demonstration, we'd have an event like where we'd ride, and of course they'd show up or whatever. So there was inevitable like where the two sides would come together and debate and argue or whatever. When the state delegates came out, it was a huge thing. There was some shoving and funny things like that. But it was really like, some way to figure this out, so that there's some sort of compromise,
Right.
in some way that they could appease. And the worst part about it really was Mayor Jenny Durkin just wouldn't make a decision. So we'd already had the plan. Rob Johnson's basically like, okay, we've been doing this for a decade. We have the plan. We have the design. It's approved. It's permitted. Let's move forward. There's no facts. There's no information. There's no studies to indicate that this shouldn't happen.
Right.
And so
money is secured. It's already a part of the plan.
Well, and it's part of the, so what Seattle's doing right now with turning paving projects into like rechannelization efforts is really smart, because you're going to repave it anyway. So why not fix the street and that kind of stuff? So it was really smart. And a lot of people complained, oh, we just thought it was a paving project, but that's just because they just didn't read all the stuff that they were putting out about it. So they kind of had to try to figure out some way to bring us all together. And with Mayor Jenny Durkin refusing to make any kind of decision and kind of tell us what was going to happen, I think the only real way she could move forward or make it seem like she was moving forward was to have this mediation, which was supposed to bring us all together. But everyone was entrenched by this time, and it had been a year of fighting about this.
Right.
So if she had just built the bike lanes when we were supposed to build the bike lanes, this probably would not have been all over the news every single week or month or whatever, and it would have died down. Vancouver just celebrated 10 years of the first time they put a bike lane in, and their number of people that commute on bicycles doubled. There's no danger, the world didn't end, and all that kind of stuff. So it would have been the same on 35th. It was really, really honestly Durkin not making any kind of a decision because she was afraid of what would happen, and then she knew they were sending her like 1,000 letters a month.
Wow. Wow.
And the businesses were constantly knocking on the door, and you have a lot of retired elderly people up there that got their sabers rattled and were really, really motivated. So
yeah, that's interesting.
I wanted to say though, with respect to the elderly and seniors. So my parents are seniors and they live in the neighborhood. They live about 10 blocks off 35th, 9 blocks off 35th, and did bicycle in their younger years, and my mother still does. And what I think that my parents, having come from a sort of a bicycling community, have a little bit more keyed in. But if you don't have access to a vehicle, and particularly all the boomers who are going to age, they're not going to be able to age where they are. They're not going to be able to age in place because they're not going to have the infrastructure to get anywhere because the sidewalks are crummy and the speeds of the cars are too quick. And it's not going to be safe for them to navigate. And I think at the same time that we want to make a community where old and young can all walk together or bike together or use public transportation if you don't have a car, if you're under 16 or whatever. At the same time that we're thinking about that, we're also getting these great opportunities for different kinds of bicycles, ones that have, supportive power, some that are just, like recumbent or funny scooters. And so what I would love to see is a complete network that people who haven't been on a bike since they were 13 and are now 80 can say to themselves, oh, with just a little bit of money, I can get my butt on a scooter or whatever, tricycle or a bicycle or whatever, and feel safe and realize that by putting in infrastructure that allows people to walk and allows people to bike and improves public transportation, that's going to keep you in your community that you love so much a lot longer.
Right.
And it's going to keep your neighbors safe. And so it can be a little hard. A lot of conversations we had, I said, have you guys, well, I don't even own a bike. I said, have you been on one of the Lime bikes? I would never get on one of those. They're dangerous. And I said, you know what, they're probably dangerous if you ride them wrong or you ride them in the wrong place, but they don't have to be. And I would encourage you to get your friends together and just ride down a sidewalk for, it's Seattle Municipal Code allows cycles to be on sidewalks. So go ahead and try it on the sidewalk and do it where you feel safe, and you might get addicted.
Right.
And so I don't know, I just want to put that out there that
well, there was a lot of older people that were in full support of the improvements too. A lot of people, and they weren't cyclists, they weren't anything, but they'd done their research and realized that, safety improvements bring up property values. Like when people's streets feel safe and nice and pretty, of course people want to live there and that kind of stuff. And the neighborhood we live into is extremely well-to-do, which is one of the reasons why they got the mayor's ear and all that kind of stuff. But like we said, there's still lots of people in our community that aren't, that are forced to use bikes and that kind of stuff. And for them, it's just like they have to have the improvements. And there were a lot of older people that they don't drive anymore, so they walk to the post office, and so they wanted things to be improved for them.
Right. I find that that it's almost like going against their own interests, but also kind of fueled by the unknown of what's going to happen. And so
some of them are just really smart. We know we can't build out of our growth, so at some point we're going to be so car centric that it's gridlock is just you're not in traffic, you are traffic kind of a thing. So they were thinking like, okay, so we have to figure out some way, and if I move people over to bikes, that's one less car on the road. So when I as a person have to run up to the pharmacy on my car because I older or whatever, that means this other person won't be on the road, they'll be on a bike or in their own lane and that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of it was just smart thinking and being still pragmatic and that kind of stuff, but also recognizing that when we implement these safety improvements, it improves for more people than just like this one set group of people. Yeah. It'll be
beneficial for everybody in the neighborhood.
And 35th's not the most important. Rainier Avenue needs safety improvements, and there's so many places that need safety improvements more than 35th. But the fact that we'd moved it so far along and it had started as a community thing. I mean, again, when the community came together and did this vision for 35th, walking and cycling were the two main things that everybody was really, really
And
focused
trees,
on.
actually. Trees were a big one, but
Trees.
there's no room for trees. But that was one of the things.
Yeah,
people-
but I mean, so we all thought we were moving towards this common goal, and then people just started getting scared and thinking like, oh, everything's going to change. But things are going to have to change, and we know that. And last mile tech that everybody's coming, I think I mentioned that I went to the CES a couple, last year or whatever, and all these companies are investing in last mile tech because more and more cities or more companies are moving to cities, and more people don't want to have a car. But they still want to zoom off to work. You know, it's a mile away.
Yeah.
Jump on a scooter, jump on a one-wheeler or whatever. And so all those people, you know, are changing the way that the city is. And then there's the other group that are trying to hold it the way it is. And that's sort of just the short-sighted version of the...
Yeah. I can understand like trying to hold on to some part of Seattle that was like, you know, was still like really, I don't know, before the big tech boom that happened here within the last 10 years. I understand that aspect of wanting to like preserve some type of neighborhood vibe or neighborhood
Well, that was
whatever it is. Yeah.
that was what's so funny about the vision.
The white flight vibe? Is that what we're talking about?
The white.
The white flight vibe that happened when...
No, but I mean, like,
That's
everyone
what
kind
Wedgwood's
of...
vibe is.
They all move away.
Yeah, in this, that's, I mean, Seattle, that's like when they moved north of 85th, it was like people didn't want urbanization, they didn't want mixing of races, and so it was just white flight, and everybody left their city. I mean, it's happened in a lot of cities, happened in Seattle too.
Right.
And I'm not saying that people who live in those communities now are trying to get away from people of color or something like that. I'm not saying that, but they have a very distinct big homes, big lots, places for your cars. You have multiple cars now. You can park them in your big wide streets, and
a lot of houses on 35th have an alleyway behind them, which is what's so absurd. So you have protected parking, and you have a place for your car, but they're so serious about still having that on-street parking. It's so crazy.
That is. They could throw in private alleyway. Yeah. Well, that's another thing too, is that bike lanes, whether you're like the well-off, it's saying like, oh, it's going to bring in these folks that, who bike, and I don't bike, and I don't want cyclists around. Yeah. Then there's the other side too, where it's putting in bike lanes in like lower-income neighborhoods or neighborhoods that have a lot of people of color in them, or with immigrant populations as well. It's like, well, then that's going to like bring in people who cycle, and I don't cycle too, and that's going to gentrify the neighborhood too. So it's almost because I'm more on the cycle lane, and safety improvements, I think, is a big part of what bicycle lanes would do. So I think knowing that that's going to be probably a big problem for a lot of people in any neighborhood. I think going forward with bike lanes, there's going to be like some kind of pushback too. But it seems like this one was especially harsh and really, visceral and just bad, and like name calling.
Well, there was craziness. They sabotaged. Someone sabotaged the fourth parking study. There was 3 parking studies that showed that we only use about 40% of our parking. They tried to do a 4th one because the SAVE people asked them to, which was crazy. But someone sabotaged that. Then there was some fireworks in some construction sites, and then the contractor
heard about that one.
Ryan told us about that one.
Reported the contractor that is doing the repaving project reported like tons of vitriol and stuff like that. They were like, this is crazy. We've never been on a site where somebody's like, people drive by and swear at us and say horrible things to us or whatever. That's when everybody thought the bike lanes were going in. So it just kind of got out of hand, and a lot of that was stirred up by the businesses and their rhetoric. And then, I mean, if you look at their Facebook feed, some of the stuff they say about cyclists and other people is
downright offensive.
Yeah, well, it's just disparaging, and it's like a horrible way to look at another human being and stuff like that. And then Durkin, like, really honestly, like, her silence and her like basically willing to put up with this and stuff like that, like sort of enabled them. Like, oh, now we got her on the run. And when you look at some of their newsletters and stuff that they talk about, they're like, we're winning, we're doing this, we're doing, And so if she had made a decision and been a leader and stuff and shut them down early, there wouldn't have been nearly as much opposition. And then the fact that she didn't, and she gave them what they wanted, now our street, the 35th, is even more dangerous because drivers are acting like idiots and like, oh, we won the thing, telling people to get off the road. I mean, they always did that, but it's like...
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to point out, is that it's not only the... So the road had a particular capacity to move people, and you can't make the road wider, so you can't increase the capacity to move people in cars, right? It's got its capacity. It's a 2-lane road.
Right.
And so the only way to increase the capacity is to give people other methods of transportation on the road. That's how we're going to move more people in the same amount of space. And so it makes sense to install the infrastructure that allows the movement of more people in the same amount of space. And they fought that, and we fought back, and now there's the parking that they wanted is gone, and there's no safety improvements, and the lanes are wider, people are moving faster. And so the road is not only feels more unsafe, and I believe, and in probably 12 to 18 months we'll find out that it is actually more unsafe just because of the design.
Right.
But it's more unsafe because literally people, this is dead serious, people will threaten you with their car. I mean, it's crazy that, because now they see people who are on bicycles as like targets. It's and as a
that's the enemy.
Slow moving chick on a bike, and I'm kind of an old lady on a bike, like I don't get a lot of people don't get mad at me a lot. I don't fit the tech bro stereotype. My bike is a junker, I don't have spandex or whatever. And on Thursday afternoon, when I was riding up 35th to my house, I'm riding in the lane, and a super dope late model BMW with an older man pulls up behind me and lays on the horn. And I was like, dude, I'm so slow, I can't go any faster. So I just sort of turned around and looked at him like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no place for me to go.
Right.
And he sort of just didn't do anything, and then I just kept biking, and he kept behind me, and then I pulled off, and then he drove. I mean, I don't know what he was, I don't know, but that's what's really fearful to me, because not only did they give us a road that seems to me to be less safe, but now they've made a small community of people that like truly hate you because you are
and a lot of that was from
on a bicycle.
The weird, I mean, they would like hold their rallies or whatever, and it was all opposed. And so initially they put on everything that they wanted to save their parking. They even produced a video, and it's really embarrassing. And it's basically
funny because
like
they're talking about it. It's just like nobody bikes, and then a Lime bike goes by.
And so
in the window behind her. It's so funny.
No, during the whole video, I think 3 bikes go by, and you're like, what? And,
I couldn't get through the whole video because I got mad.
Yeah, but what they literally say, we're fighting for our survival, but they mean their businesses, not human beings. And then, but they made this whole video about wanting to retain the parking, and then sort of the 11th hour, they chose a plan that they'd already rejected a year before to put this center turn lane down the middle. The problem with the center turn lane is it doesn't turn into anything for like huge swaths. Like it literally doesn't go anywhere. Like there's nothing to turn into, or it turns into private people's parking lots, right? So the average car sits for 95% of its life just sitting there. It only is actually in use about 5% of the time. So you can imagine how often this center turn lane's used. Yeah. And so of course people are just zooming down it. The other day I literally saw a guy go 6 blocks in it, because why not? Like I got to get up to this, why wouldn't you? Yeah. And then we still, even with the amount of parking that they removed, have a ton of parking. So you see people driving down the parking lane until they can turn right into a business, because why wouldn't you? So if you're a bicyclist and you're like in that thing, you're like, oh my God, there's somebody right behind me and I didn't have it. I'm in a parking lane. Yeah. And then they certainly the rhetoric and the vitriol and that kind of stuff has spilled over, and it definitely has become like an us versus them. And personally, I blame that on Durkin and SDOT, because they were told to and forced to. But like Sam Zimbabwe told us that, well, you just take the lane. Well, it's very difficult to take the lane when you're going 12 miles an hour and you have like a 4-ton vehicle bearing down on you behind you.
Honking their horn, running their engine.
Yeah, I mean, and I had taken the lane for sure at the hill, but because I didn't want to get doored. But I was really surprised that I don't know. I was like, geez. Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say that I think is really important for people to think about is that from a climate, I mean, this is really a climate concern as well. And I think that we tried to talk about that with people, and we tried to talk about that with the group that was fighting the safety improvements. And an
environmental issue.
Yeah, and I said, this is more than just safety about physical bodies on the street. It's safety about people trying to breathe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's if we're going to be a climate friendly city or what, I don't.
Neutral city.
And if we're going to meet the goals that our mayor
Yeah.
supposedly wants to meet,
Yeah.
then we're going to have to make some changes. And I just think that she is hella weak. She is so super weak, Jenny Durkin. You are weak sauce.
The number one cause of pollution in Seattle is transportation. And so...
And like, you can get a $7,500 tax break for buying an electric car.
Right.
Okay. Which still has like tires, I mean, and batteries.
Right.
It's not like it's
Well, it doesn't do emissions, at least.
Well, it doesn't do emissions, but like
The cost of production
right.
are still astronomical.
Like
yeah.
the amount of metals in tire that we see in stormwater, unreal. That is what's killing Puget Sound. And I got a $7,500 tax break to buy that car. I didn't get shit when I bought my bike. I didn't get shit.
Right.
And I can write off parking on my taxes. I didn't get shit for my bike.
Yeah, we
Right.
can't. I keep joking. I want to send my bike tubes for those, street improvements because I keep blowing tires. I'm like, well, she
Yeah.
gets some kickback.
Our
Reimbursement
office,
for this.
actually gives you $20 a month if you bike, which is cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they give it to walker people who walk too.
Excellent.
That's great.
And you know what? When you look at the number of people who commute by bike, so it's like something like right in Seattle right now, it's somewhere between, it's about 3% right now. It dropped off a little bit. It was like 4 and then it came down to 3. It's probably back up because the weather's been insane. But, we don't spend that on bicycle infrastructure. Less, 50% of the population doesn't walk to work, but you would never say, don't put in a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Don't put in a sidewalk. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Well, New York City is only about 4% of the population of the United States, but you'd be absurd to not pay attention to what's going on in New York City, right? So just because there's only 3 or 4% of the population that cycles to work in Seattle doesn't mean they should be disregarded completely. And then the other point we've always tried to make was that the safety improvements were about safety. And so it was about safety for all users, pedestrians, drivers, and cyclists, and mobility impaired people, and that kind of stuff. And they've done study after study after study that 75th in our own neighborhood saw a drop in collisions 45% when they put the bicycle lanes in. So we know that just adding that infrastructure in slows people down, improves collision rates. I mean, like all sorts of factors. So it's not just about providing somewhere for cyclists, which is extremely important. It's also that it works. Like it totally changes the infrastructure of the city. I ride down Dexter every day.
Yeah,
that
same.
thing is sweet, man. Like
Yeah.
I love that. I was like, I'm not afraid of nothing. But then the next thing I know,
improvements too.
Yeah, and I'm shot off. The next thing I know, it just ends, and I'm shot off into nowhere. And you're like, this is scary as crap.
I say that's magic, right, Colin?
Yeah, it's magic bike lanes. They appear out of nowhere, disappear at will.
65th has a little bit of that right now. You're like,
It
ooh, this is,
does.
whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
Totally.
It does.
I work off Roy, and it's awesome. Like, there I am. I've got my little bicycle lane. I'm competing with traffic, and then it just ends. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. What now?
Yes.
And I think it's important actually also to say for people who don't maybe ride the city or don't commute or whatever they want to call themselves, weekend warriors or whatever their term is for themselves, who say, I don't ride downtown, I don't really need that, is it's really important if we want to create a community, a safe community for people to age with bike lanes, people to be introduced as children. I mean,
that's true.
some of the biggest contingent of bike riders in our city are people who are 13 years old. So we want to make a place for them. And so maybe you don't ride in Edmonds because it's really far away, but that doesn't mean that you don't want to have infrastructure for people who do ride at Edmonds, because it gives you places to go, and it makes for a network that supports everybody.
Right.
And we have heard, and not particularly related to 35th, but some of the Connected Bicycle Network, we did hear from cyclists that said, well, we don't care, we don't ever ride there. And I'm like, but just because you don't ride down East Lake Avenue doesn't mean that your friend isn't going to.
Right. Or, how often will we ride there more?
Yeah, or would you ride there, right?
More.
Whatever that Kevin Costner movie is.
When I started biking, I started looking at the Seattle Bike Network map religiously. I like maps a lot. You know, I'm getting into it. And then, I'm picking where I go based on this map because I want to feel supported and safe when I'm going to these businesses. And I remember when you lived in Wedgwood, Matthew, that I never came to see you. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, on one
I
side,
did come to see you, but no, the point is, it's hard to get there from.
Totally true. Vancouver and
Yes.
Portland saw double the amount of people that were willing to bicycle after they put in the infrastructure that they have. And so when we had the Seattle Squeeze that everyone was scared to death of or whatever, like the amount of people that rode their bikes increased significantly.
Oh, that made me furious. Jenny Durkin.
Yeah.
Thanks, motherfucker. She specifically thanked cyclists.
Yeah.
And I was like, give us the
wild.
place you ride, you assed hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very angry at her.
Yeah, thanks for mitigating all this hype that was coming around this. But that's about it. We'll just give you a shout out on the news.
And it was like,
She showed up at a climate summit and said, we got to figure out ways of getting people out of their cars. We got to, bikes and buses and that kind of stuff. And then she's just done nothing. She's literally built a half a mile in the last year of bike lanes, and so we're so far off on what we're supposed to be getting. Right. But
and I'm sorry, SDOT, you have a lot of really great engineers. You hire really great engineering consultants. Yeah. Okay, you are designing the street, not the random optometry store in Wedgwood that might have one person that goes in and buys glasses every 8 years and has a parking lot for 20 cars.
We said that a lot.
You don't know anything about road design. Would you argue with the physician if a physician said you need to have your heart replaced? No, the optometrist said that they're going to do it for me. No, you wouldn't. And it makes me mad. And Jenny Durkin did not support, and I know that people at SDOT were feeling.
Oh yeah, we
really
worked with them.
What is the word when you feel sunken, beat
defeated
down, defeated? And when I was down at Walk Bike, I ran into some people from SDOT, and they were feeling very defeated. And just to sit in those meetings when, we found out via social media that they weren't doing the bike lanes, but then 10 minutes later we got invited to go to the mayor's office so that they could tell us again.
Right.
They changed the page.
Of course, the mayor didn't
before.
come. But Sam Zimbabwe was there. He was very nice. He just,
But
just
that's where a lot of people found out was just through.
We found out through social media.
And just the straight up meetings that said we're gonna go with this the save 35th proposal, right? And that was it. And
well,
then
it's
that was
interesting too because when that happened, I can't tell how many people contacted us and we're all like, "Wait, I thought we were getting bike lanes," because they had no idea all this stuff was going on because SDOT's page literally said, and the emails that they were sending out still talked about bike lanes the week before they made this announcement. So people are all didn't get that engaged because they were
it on their social media before meeting with the two groups.
Yeah, well, that was
so
they apologized for that or whatever, but
they did. They apologized for that. It was really the staff is really nice. I don't have any hard feelings for SDOT or for the staff of the mayor.
They were really helpful when we were trying to get the bike lanes put together and gave us all sorts of facts and
their facts are public, by the way. If anybody wants bike facts,
any of us, but they were really, really helpful and really wonderful, and they were clearly pushing for it. But it wasn't.
But the optometrist didn't want the bike lanes.
Well, so that's what we talked about several times too. That's really interesting. We don't build bridges based on public opinion. We don't build skyscrapers. Hey, what do you guys think of this? What do you think it's structurally sound? Yeah. So why in the world are we building bike or drive lanes based on public opinion? It makes no sense. And exactly what we sort of made fun of happening has happened. Consensus built this road that's a total speedway, and we've had 3 cyclists hit in. A
22-year-old motorcyclist was killed.
A motorcyclist was struck and killed, and the thing about it is maybe that still would have happened, but we know from several studies that these safety improvements that have taken place in Nickerson, Stoneway, 75th have improved and saved lives and made safety improvements, drastically reduced collisions and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. So right now,
don't blame SDOT. SDOT's trying. We have some incredible.
It sounds like it. The idea to implement the bike master plan in addition to what they were already doing. Whoever thought of that, shout out. That's smart.
Well,
the whole bicycle master plan was brilliant. I mean, they came to our community and gave us 2 meetings, listened to what people had to say, changed the I think that's why we got one protected and one unprotected, and then there was just going to be a Sharrow down on 55th because they listened to the community and went back and did what we asked for, and then 2 years later everybody freaks out and doesn't want any bike lanes. So they did their job. They worked really, really hard.
I do think
on this.
they need more support for public outreach and for data collection. which they're working on getting.
Yeah.
But these people also show up at these community meetings and just get their asses handed to them for doing their jobs and doing stuff that's going to make your neighborhood safer.
Right.
And oh my God, I can't believe these meetings we went to, and the people were behind us were just enraged. Like these people were like,
but that was only
Nazis or something
6
like that.
after they found out. And
no, and these people are just talking about how they can make our neighborhood more safe.
Yeah.
And they just got, the one guy I remember was just, he told this college kid that he wouldn't be around very much longer. So he didn't have any right to speak because the kid was like, I ride my bike to school every day and it would be really important to me to have 35th safe or whatever.
Yeah.
They were just, and I remember one of the meetings, the guy behind me said, I'm going to go give that lady a piece of my mind and all this, after the meeting was over. And you're like, dude, calm down,
Right.
Because we're all passionate about it, which is awesome. But then when that things turn out to, where we're being threatening or like demeaning to other human beings, just because they're on a bicycle, it starts getting insane.
I just want to be clear too that the public meetings where they showed up to yell were after like the improvements were like.
Oh really?
They didn't go to any
2018.
previous.
Right. Wow. They didn't show.
They didn't go to any previous public meetings. It was just like after the businesses put up signs.
Talking shit about our design.
Yeah,
it's like, look at all that hard work you did. I'm just gonna shit all over it.
Yeah, and in fact, the anti-safety group had a little meeting at the library, where they wave signs at the public library on the corner. And so I had a conversation with a guy, very nice guy, Boeing engineer, super nice guy. I had a nice conversation with him. He was anti the safety improvements, and I said, "Did you go to where do you live?" "Oh, I live down on Hawthorne Hills, which is a neighborhood that's sort of in between Bryant and kind of Sandpoint Way."
Okay.
It's in the community. You would use those businesses probably if you lived in Hawthorne.
Yeah.
It's also a well-to-do community. And it's right on Sandpoint Way, kind of flanks Sandpoint Way. And I said, "Did you go to the public meeting by SDOT for the Sandpoint Way improvements yesterday?" And he goes, "No."
No.
Okay, so it's the first SDOT meeting. It's just collecting ideas for stuff that's going to happen in a decade.
Yeah.
Okay, you are right now in the throes of screaming about something that you didn't go to the public meetings for, and you're not making the time. You're not making the time.
Right.
I mean, that's insane.
I had an exchange with John Russo online, and it was awesome because after they announced that they weren't going to do the safety improvements, he admitted that he hadn't looked at any of the studies or anything for 35th. So it was like hilarious that he's this guy that's like, promoting this and helping them with all this stuff, but he never looked at any of the engineering or any of the studies for the street that he's helping them protest. It was insane. And that happened a lot. Whenever we'd have these conversations, when you would talk to people and say, "Have you looked at the plans? Have you looked into what they really have planned?" Most of the time they said no. They just had heard whilst they were at the church or something like that it was going to be bad and they should do something about it.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, something I found amazing was that the whole saving the parking spaces on there, even though an alternative proposal plan now, either plan, whether it was bike lanes or no bike lanes, there's no parking, doesn't matter.
Right.
Same parking amount, whether one or the other. And so that whole it's going to hurt businesses because you can't park in front of it, doesn't matter in the first place.
Well, it was interesting because I went to one a couple weeks ago that was kind of a follow-up community, let's hear what you have, and there was a crowd out in front that were like, we're really pissed. They were like, we still lost our parking. You guys promised that we wouldn't lose our parking. So there is a group of people that save 35th from save 35th. They're really, really upset about it. But for the most part, no. I mean, they made this whole video and all this stuff about our survival and stuff. But when it came down to it, it was really they just didn't want bike lanes. One of the owners of one of the businesses, 2 days after a woman was hit on 70th and 35th, about a block from her business, was on Como News or something, and she literally said, "I'm just glad that they didn't put bike lanes in." And that was her soundbite. And you're like, what?
Wow.
Somebody just got hurt, and it wouldn't have hurt you. It wouldn't have done anything. It was just...
After they announced it, Jordan Royer said, "It's nice to see a win for cars." And it's like, what? That's like being like, it's nice to see a win for white guys. I mean, it's like, we have a history of wins for cars. We need some wins for pedestrians and wins for the environment and wins for people who ride bikes.
Yep, true.
Whatever.
True.
Sorry.
So, knowing that it's already been paved over, the mayor and SDOT had recognized that there needs to be more safety improvements going on right now. What do you think in the short term or long term moving forward? What do you think that there will be more safety improvements, or how would that go about? And then also in the future, when there's more plans that are coming up, because more plans are going to be coming up throughout the city, throughout the years. How does one ensure that what was planned is actually going to happen? Does there have to be a mandate that comes from the council? or from the people that say whatever's planned needs to be implemented?
The city council is supposed to be in charge of our transportation. So Mike O'Brien and Sally Bagshaw have been the ones that have been pushing back on this and have said it publicly. They don't think it's the way that it is now is working. I think, they changed the speed limit to 25, and they put out some patrol cops, and then they've put in more cross walks that are lit up or whatever. The problem with it is we know that people will pay attention to the speed limit signs for about 2 weeks after they're put up, and then they're like, whatever, I'm going to go whatever speed I want to. There was a guy online that admitted he'd gone between 5 and 50 miles per hour on 35th at various times during his life. And so, going 50 miles an hour on 35th is insane. But I honestly think the only way that we're going to get what we want is when Durkin's no longer the mayor. We need somebody that's going to have some vision and some leadership and is going to have to make some hard decisions. The problem that we have now is we have leaders that don't want to lead. We lost Rob Johnson because he got sick of all this crap and stuff like that. I mean, like, the guy heard from the community and tried to implement it, and when he heard from businesses tried to like push back or whatever, he stood his ground, and then now I would go too. I mean, the man received death threats and stuff like that, and people were just mean to him, and we went to so many of those things and they didn't talk to him, they yelled at him. And who wants to go into public service if you're going to be treated that way? But honestly, like, we have to start electing people that are going to really make decisions about housing, about transportation that are going to improve our city, because right now we've got like the status quo. We have these fake progressive people that'll talk the talk, and then when it comes down to it, they don't do anything. And that's the way that Mayor Durkin is. She will go on the a community thing and talk about getting people out of their cars, but then her legislation and her policies are the exact opposite. So it's the only way things are going to change. And I think things can change for 35th in the future. I mean, it's ready. Like Rob Johnson said, it's just striping. Yeah. It's really not that expensive to stripe a city. The paving's done. So hopefully that in the future. And hopefully it's not because too many people get hurt.
I do think, though, like, say for cyclists and walkers and even people who drive, people in cars, to just like pay attention, not only when you're driving and biking, but to pay attention about the politics, pay attention to SDOT. Okay. When there's surveys, take them. At the community events, at the Fremont Sunday Market or the West Seattle Market or whatever. There's typically an SDOT table there, and they'll give you a keychain and ask questions and give ideas and try to stay engaged. It's actually really gratifying to get involved, and it doesn't take much time and doesn't take any money to give your input. So just and
it does affect the city, obviously.
Right.
So,
has real effect. We can you can attest to that.
And I also think it's really, really great if community people do what the Safe 35th people did, like try to stand up and it's your community, so you got to fight for it, or people are going to just steamroll right over you. So like, get together. It didn't cost us that much money, it just cost us some time, but it was still kind of fun. We met some wonderful, amazing people that we would have never had a chance to get to know. We all still talk and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful opportunity just to get to know people in your community and do a positive impact. We didn't get what we wanted, but I mean, like, we still, like, there's not an article that's written about transportation in Seattle now that doesn't at some point bring up 35th Avenue, and that's all this work that this small little group did. I mean, it's like 200 people, that's it. Right. So there is a chance to do stuff, and we could have won if we had a different type of leader, who listened to the science and then thought about like what it would do in the future and that kind of stuff. We would have got what we deserved. So,
absolutely. Well, I want to thank both of you for being here and for all the work that you do for your community and for just the safety of others around you, including yourselves. But your neighborhood.
Us to talk for an hour about bikes.
We love this.
Yeah, this is great.
And we'll stay connected because there's still a lot of work to be done up there, and there's
There's a lot of nice community groups that have reached out to us about like what worked for us and what didn't. So I think there's just a chance for us, there's all sorts of good change that could happen. So
I believe so too. All right. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Lolly.
Thank you.
For both being on here. We'll turn on the AC. It's hot in here.
All right, cool.
Thank you both.
You edit that, right?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say,
you might want to take out me calling Jenny Durkin weak sauce because I have a job that I work for her sometimes.
And also the part where I go, I don't know where I was going with that.